Hello, this is Tomas Matuszak in Dwan's Cup 401 with the short of the long on inheritance. Alright, so first of all, what is inheritance? Well, it's basically, and that's what I think at least, a more efficient way to copy and paste methods and properties. So let's assume I have two classes, a player class and an enemy class, and I say that both of those should have a health and a mana property, with the getters and setters for those, of course. With inheritance, I can create a class called Vitals class that the player and enemy classes can inherit, and so they can both have health and mana without me having to copy and paste the properties and the getters and setters from one into the other. I definitely need an example here. So here we go. Let's start off with the Vitals class. It has the health and mana parameters with the getters and setters. And we say that the enemy class and the player class extend the Vitals class. What it does is it allows enemy class and player class to call and use all of the methods and access all of the variables that are in Vitals class as if those methods and those variables were their own. It effectively copies and pastes everything in the Vitals class to the enemy class and the player class. That's what it effectively does. You could think about it almost as if the enemy class is a vital class and that the player class is a vital class. That's the way you can think about it. The same way that a human is a mammal and a sardine is a fish. They have common properties. We call the class that is being inherited the superclass, and the classes that are inheriting the subclasses. And the subclass automatically implements all of the interfaces implemented by the superclass. Now, what happens when the subclass has let's say a method that has the exact same name as a method in the superclass? What happens? Well, the method in the subclass overrides the method in the superclass in that specific class. And so what you would have to do if you did want the method from the superclass and not the subclass, you would have to do super dot and then whatever the name of that method is to get the one from the super. And I definitely need an example for that one. So here we go. Let's say that Vitals class has a method called change strength. Well, if we want to have that work differently for the player class, let's say, then in the player class, we would have to make our own change strength method. And that change strength method in the player class will override the inherited change strength method from Vitals class. So unless you say super.changeStrength, it's going to be calling the local version. It's going to be calling the player class version. Alright, now what happens if you want to call the constructor of the superclass in the constructor of the subclass? Well, all you have to do is, when you're making the constructor for the subclass, let's say for player class we're making the constructor for player class, then the first statement in the constructor will have to be the superclass constructor. So it needs to be the first thing in the subclass constructor. I definitely need an example here. So here we go. This is the constructor for the enemy class. We see it takes an integer h, integer m, and a string name. And so the first thing we want to do is we want to call the constructor for the superclass, and there it is, super hm. That's the constructor for the superclass. And then we can do whatever we want after that, but the constructor for the superclass must be the first thing in the enemy class constructor. Must be the first statement there. Interfaces can also inherit other interfaces. Classes can inherit other classes, but classes cannot inherit interfaces, and vice versa. I mean, that kind of makes sense because they're not even, remotely interchangeable. So yeah, that's how that works.